because the natural light should be good. Where's this light now?
Yeah, that's fine. We're going live now anyway.
There we go. Let's just see what this is like. This is just natural light.
Okay, Mark, you're live now, so mind your P's and Q's.
There you go.
That's fine. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my new show called Out of Nowhere. It's a brand new show. I've been going about 4 months now. We've had some terrific guests on my show in that time, because I used to be on Beacon of Light Radio as well. That's where I presume Mark and Robert, they know me from. So my guests today are Rob Freeman and Mark Natnab. So you can join us to engage the phenomena to discuss their UFO contact related expeditions and film projects. Can we please welcome Rob and Mark to the show? Hello there.
Hey, Bob. Thanks again
Hey,
for
Bob.
having us on your show. The 3 years has passed real fast since we last talked.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. For a lot of people out there, who are you guys? How did you meet, and how did you get on?
Well, Mark, why don't you tell the story at this point?
Well, I met Rob Freeman in 2010, so it's going to be our 15-year anniversary coming up, and we had a fantastic time making some movies together, becoming friends, just doing everything in the first couple of years, and then what ended up happening was, while we were making a movie, there was like a break, where people are like doing different things, and maybe they're getting wardrobe on or makeup, and the question was kind of thrown out there, has anyone ever seen a UFO? And everyone's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And Rob came right in with it and said, yeah, actually, I did. I had an experience when I was 12 or 13 years old. 2 experiences kind of within the same couple of month of each other, and told the story. Now I'll let Rob tell the story. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay. Do you want me to actually talk about the experience?
Yes.
Okay. So real quick, I was just in Scouts, 12 years
Yeah,
old.
about your experience, yes, please.
I'm sorry? Go ahead.
No, about your experience, Rob. He said, go ahead.
You're all right.
Yep. We've got a little time delay overseas here on this internet. So, yeah, I was just at Scouts, and I was waiting for my mom to pick me up outside the church. This is in Sarnia, Ontario, Bob, Canada, right at the bottom of Lake Huron. And as I looked out, I saw this light in the sky, and there were these kids in the street. And they said, hey, mister, there's me a mister, I'm only 12 years old, but I had my Scout stuff, my hat, my tie, shiny boots, the socks, the shorts, all that. So to them, I looked a lot older. But anyway, they said, hey, there's a helicopter in the sky. And I looked at it and I said, kids, that's not a helicopter. They said, what is it? I said, I don't know. They disappeared, and I was watching this thing. It was going from the north to the south, Bob, very slowly. And the strange thing was, when it changed directions, it was instantaneous, like a video game. Like, anything physically in our world, when it changes directions, it either has to come to a stop or it goes around in an arc. If it was a helicopter, this, in a split second, now it's going the other direction. So I thought, this is very strange to me. This is 1966, there was no internet. We don't have the technology then that we have today. So I was suspecting that this was an otherworldly craft. What else could it be? And I was saying to myself, could this be something from the U.S. military? Because they had the Selfridge Air Force Base on the other side of the river, which was the United States, just down the river by like 15 or 20 miles. So I was torn between the two. Is it otherworldly? Is it something top secret of ours? But it kept going back and forth from north to south. And it initially started up at about maybe 800 feet up, maybe 250 meters, whatever. And then it came slow. Every time it changed direction, it was coming lower to the point where it was maybe 500 or 600 feet up. And I could see it was like round. And when I looked, strained my eyes to see, it looked like there was a lens in the bottom. And it looked like the light was coming from behind the lens. In other words, from inside this, whatever it was, this craft. But what really made the hair go up on my arms was I could see figures moving around behind this lens. And that's when I'm thinking, oh my God, am I about to be abducted? And are they stalking me? I was the only person around at this point. And just then my mother showed up. Thank God. And I said, Mom, you got to get out of the car. There's a flying saucer in the sky. That's what we called them at that time. And she said, oh, Rob, don't be silly. We got to get going home. You got homework to do. You've got school in the morning. And I said, no, get out of the car. So we were negotiating for about maybe 10 seconds. And by the time I convinced her to get out of the car and look up, it was gone. And of course, my elation went from here down to like here, because now I felt like, oh, she's going to think I'm making this all up. And this is all just a figment of my imagination. So it was pretty quiet in the car when we went home. I went home and told my brother and my dad, and they just kind of laughed. And, you know, I wasn't happy. I just went to my room, closed the door, did my homework, and went to bed. And that was the end of it. Well, the next day after school was done, when I got home, the minute I walked in the door, my mom was all excited. Rob, you got to see this. It's in the newspaper. It's on the front and the second page of the newspaper. What you saw last night, it's all over the paper. And there's policemen talking about it. There's, Air Force people, top Air Force from the US people talking about it. All these important people saw it. Over 200 people witnessed this. So, and she read me out the whole article. Now, just a part to this, years later, maybe, I don't know what it was, Mark, maybe 6 years ago, I went with my younger son back to Sarnia, Ontario. I live an hour away near London, Ontario now. But we went back to the library to get the microfilm of the article. Okay. We pulled it up. We found it.
Yeah.
Problem was, it only had page 1. Page 2 is missing. Okay. Page 2.
Oh, no.
Of course, this is how conspiracy theories start, right? This is the origin right here. So page 2 is missing, but I remember my mom specifically turning the newspaper over to page 2 and reading me all about how the top people had been interviewed at the Air Force Base. And they said that they sent 2 jet fighters out after this thing. And when they got into the sky and tried to track it, tried to come near it, it just took off like a bat out of hell and left the 2 fighters in their dust. So, there was all this information that was spoken to the media by top people at the base. So was that the reason page 2 is missing today? So I said, well, how can we get page 2? She said, well, there's 7 other archives around Canada, and likely one of them or more will have page 2. So she actually got on the phone and called every one of them for me. And every one of them, page 2 was missing, Bob. So, was it government that intervened? Probably, because the real juicy details from top government officials was on page 2. And I remember it from my mom reading it to me. I don't have a copy of that. I only have a copy of the microfilm of page 1 to this day. I have that. So that was Go ahead.
It's strange you're saying that, because in, I think, 1962, I was with 2 more lads. I think we were 15 and 16 at the time. And I saw a cigar-shaped object in the sky. We all did, all 3 of us. And we were looking at it and saying, what the hell's that? We're over a golf course in Halifax, in West Yorkshire, in the UK. And I said, I'm looking at it. And for about 5 minutes, we're trying to figure out what it was. There are a line like windows downside of it, like that, in the middle of it, and then it flew off. Never thought note of it. I went to work the morning after, and by all accounts, somebody had rang the paper up, given my name, and said I'd seen a flying object over Halifax. I got ridiculed, absolutely ridiculed. I've tried to find the paper since, can't find it anywhere. Vanished. And it was on the front page, only a little, about, I don't know, 4 lines. Man sees flying object over Halifax.
Ah.
And it's vanished, gone.
Well, it's interesting, Bob, because, many people are afraid to come forward with their stories. And for fear of being ridiculed, laughed at, called crazy, people are worried about their jobs, their family relationships, all these things. It's opening up more these days. It's becoming more, fashionable, or it's okay to talk about it now. But, in my case, because the next day it was on 2 great big pages of the newspaper, from that point on, I never worried about being laughed at or ridiculed, because I said, well, it was in the paper. The police saw it. The mayor saw it. All these people. So I guess we're all crazy. And I would just laugh, But and that's really helped me, I guess, in our journey, Mark and I, because I've never really worried about that. It's never held me back at all. It's not a thing in my mind, as it is in many other people's minds who have seen things, that the fear becomes so strong for them that, if they speak about what they've seen, they're going to be ridiculed. And that's understandable. Nobody wants to be ridiculed. But the interesting thing was, it was literally a couple weeks later that my friend across the street said, Rob, how can I see a flying saucer? And I just made it up on the fly. I just said, well, John, I said, let's go on the roof of my house on a clear night and maybe we'll see one. I mean, I did it. I just made that up. I didn't know. But I guess you would say that I had put the intention out to the universe. Right. And anyway, within the next few days, there was a nice clear night. We went on the roof, with, binoculars, tape recorder, walkie-talkie, notepad and pencil and all these things. There's sleeping bags and pillows because it was cold. And we were up there maybe 30 minutes and nothing was happening. And, young boys, you could get bored very quickly. And I said to him, well, John, I don't think we're going to, and I didn't even finish the word see anything. And sure enough, from the north, a whole fleet of lights from the north horizon, it seemed to be hundreds of lights, went right across the sky, right over top of us, all the way to the south horizon in literally a second and a half.
Oh my God.
And from our perspective, these lights seemed to be in the heavens. Like it was like the stars were moving. And we go, whoa, did you see that? Yeah, what was it? I don't know. And then literally 30 seconds later, from the south again, these hundreds of lights, this whole fleet of lights or ships or crafts or whatever they were, came from the south all the way across us, right overhead to the north in literally a second and a half or 2 seconds. So those are the 2 stories I told when we were filming there with Mark, and it was the second story that Mark was most interested in. Mark, maybe you can pick up from there.
Yeah, it was really interesting for me, Bob, because
Yes, please.
It was interesting because the first story was very classic, and lots of witnesses, very validated, very, very public, like a big public perception of everything. And you can go online and read about the flap. They called it the flap of 1966, Michigan, whole series of things. So I enjoyed that story, but I was as a filmmaker, I was very fascinated, intrigued by the second story because I remembered seeing Close Encounters of the Third Kind when I was like 9 years old, and and the idea of these two boys excited going up the antenna of a house with a little makeshift sky watching kit, like Rob mentioned, the compass and walkie-talkie and paper, and I could see it. I could visualize that, and that's kind of the filmmaker in me was like, oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that wonderment, that discovery of what's beyond our world. That the imaginations of these two boys, and I also felt like strongly in that moment that Rob and his friend had willed that. That they had actually had the intention, and the intention was so strong that maybe their vibration was higher, the frequency of thought, the level of consciousness, without them even really being aware. I mean, especially children, right? When you're a child,
Yeah.
you're as wide open as you can get when it comes to believing and feeling anything. So I spent, I don't know,
Imaginations yeah.
it's the imagination, right? And the joy of it, the joy and the wonderment of it. And 4 or 5 months, I researched all this. I thought it was very interesting. I wonder if there are other people around the world that do this, And then Facebook, being powerful, it put me in a position to interface with groups in Australia and groups in Europe, and these people that were practicing these protocols, close encounters of the fifth kind, meaning, bilateral communication, really, really wanting to will on the experience. And so I did all that research, and I came to Rob and I said, I don't think it was an accident. I said, I really don't think it was by chance that you had that first experience, and that it was followed up by an enthusiasm to see what else could be seen or experienced. And I said, I think we could go around the world and connect with different people that would be like-hearted, like-minded with us, that they would share that commonality of experience and enthusiasm. And he was into it right away. It was like minutes. I said, it's going to cost some money, so that's no problem. We're going to go and we're going to do it. And yeah, now we're 21 countries in.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Do you think,
Yeah.
both of you, both of you, this question, do you think we are choosing to see things?
It's very possible, at least some people are. I mean, what I feel myself, this is my personal opinion, is they do choose who they would like to see them. That's what I feel based on the experiences we've been having. And we've interviewed hundreds of people, Bob, and we hear time and time and time again how this runs in families. It's like they are studying families. Okay. And chances are, if mom or dad have had experience with this phenomena, the kids will too. So it does feel like, we're kind of chosen. Like, it almost feels now when I look back that I was singled out when I came out of that church to see this, that was a little bit of a setup. And I will say also, when I look back, I don't even remember those young kids leaving. Like all of a sudden they were gone, Bob. I mean, I was aware of my surroundings, including cars on the street, anybody that might have been in the area, including the kids, but I do not remember seeing those children walk away. So the question that I have today for myself back then was, were those real children or were they part of the setup? I don't know. I never saw it. And I mean, I had a clear view down the road. It's Front Street in Sarnia. I could see down the road 1,000 feet both ways, and I never saw them disappear. I never saw them walk away.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they were just gone.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. What's the difference in high strangeness around the world then?
Well, here's the thing, is Mark and I say that the lights in the sky will be typically what will get you into this phenomena, but it's the cool high strangeness that will keep you there.
Yeah.
And we kind of ignored at the first all of these cool, we call them cool high strangeness, all of these things that started happening. It's like, oh well, don't pay any attention to that, that's just coincidental or whatever. And then we realized that's probably 80% of what we experience. Some of the crazy things that we've had happen, we don't even know where to begin. Mark keeps a list, and I think it's over 50 now, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't consider an expedition successful unless we have some of this cool high strangeness happening, and it's never failed us. And it either happens to us on the expedition, or it happens to our partners back home during our expedition when we're in another country. But for sure, we have these impossible things happen. For example, we were in Peru with, who was with us? There was Paula Harris. Was Ricardo with us that night?
No,
Mark?
are you speaking of Playa Yaya?
No, well, when you had that personal earthquake in your room.
Yeah, that was in when we came into Chilca. Well, Lima. We were in Lima.
Okay.
And yeah, that was Paula Harris was downstairs. You and Bill were upstairs.
Okay, and we were meeting up with Ricardo later.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And Giorgio Pacentia was with us. Yeah. All great people. And I don't know what time it was, but it was, we had already been out. Had we been out to the Chilca Desert the night before?
No, we went out the following day.
Okay.
But
anyway, Mark comes into my room, knocks on the door and comes in. I don't even know what time it was. It could have been like 3 a.m. or something.
Yeah, it was early.
With eyes as big as saucers. And I'm like, Mark, take it easy here.
And Caleb.
You got to come to my room. Like, there's an earthquake happening. And I go into my room. And of course, with me, I automatically grab my phone from my camera and I put it on video and started filming. His floor, the tile of the floor was going like this and pushing up, and all the tiles were breaking, Bob. And while that was happening, there were white orbs flying around in the room. I captured it all on video.
Yeah.
And I only caught the last part of the earthquake. Now, nobody else in the house had it happen. It only happened in Mark's room. So, this is just one of the many things we get, and we don't get afraid of them anymore because they're harmless. Yeah. We take them as little cosmic winks. And, it's kind of like, did you ever see the movie Interstellar? And there's the one scene where the father, he's so small because of doing the time traveling or whatever he did. I got to watch the movie again. I love that movie. But he was so tiny because he was in another dimension or something, and he was in the study. His daughter was at the desk, and he needed to get the attention of his daughter, but he was microscopically small, so his daughter, he couldn't talk, or the daughter couldn't see him. So with all his strength, he pushed out a book onto the floor. And, it was a special book, and that was a message to her. So this was how he was able to communicate through this dimension to her. Mark and I feel like all of this cool high strangeness that we get, it's all part of a communication we're getting. Some of it's metaphorical. Some of it seems to contain messages, but we just embrace it. It's harmless. It's part of almost like the trickster phenomena. It's kind of like a little boy pulling little tricks on his brothers and sisters and mom and dad, all very harmless stunts, but just to get everybody laughing or just to get everybody talking. And it's just so interesting, the different things that we have happen around this cool high strangeness theme. And it seems to be all interlaced with the whole greater phenomena of UFOs and so on.
What's it like? I know you've been to Death Valley. What did you think of that place? And did anything open up? Any dimensions open up for you?
Well, Mark, we did have that one thing happened. I wasn't able to capture it on film.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Is that the one where the 4 orange lights?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting. I mean, it makes your mind wonder, like, are those military flares? Are they, your mind tries to logically put things together. All I remember about that, Rob was looking one way and I was looking the other, and we had a third person there with us as well. And these 4 orange lights just opened up in front, like one after the next. And they seemed very close, and they also moved like a snake. Like it wasn't like a line, it was like a wave. And it was for like 6 or 8 seconds. Like it wasn't really short. They just went across and faded out. So yeah. Yeah, it makes you wonder, like what exactly was that? But we've experienced a lot of that. Like even when we think of now, we think of Argentina and we think of Bolivia, because that's where we've been recently over the last couple of months. And very strange things, very different lights phenomena showing up in the camera.
Yeah, the one in Argentina, Bob, was we had this lasted for how long? 45 minutes or an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah. We would have these lights come on and move and then go off over about 10 seconds. Now, I told the group that we were with, like, it's okay to point this out with a laser, but do not strike the light because it could be potentially, an aircraft. We don't know for sure, but just not to take any chances. Never strike a light that you see in the sky with a laser.
True.
I was flying out of Mexico one time in a commercial plane, and we had just taken off, and we were up at about 3,000 or 4,000 feet, and I happened to look down to the city, and somebody shone a laser right in my eyes, and I can't tell you the brightness it was. I immediately closed my eyes, but all I could see was green in my entire field of vision, so bright. And the bottom line is, if you shine your laser directly at any of these lights and it's a plane and there's a pilot, even if it's an ET craft and they've got a pilot, do you think they appreciate that? A laser is so strong that it could blind the pilots, whether they're, pilots like from ourselves, earthly people, or pilots from other worldly craft. So we draw circles around them always, right? So after we took all this footage to Dave Palachuk from MUFON Canada, he's the director emeritus, I forget how you say that word, past director, but he's their chief investigator. He analyzed all this footage we had captured over the 45 minutes, and we got tons of footage. And he said, Rob, this is proving some theories we have. And all this stuff is on MUFON Canada, apparently. And he's got close-ups of the laser beam. Apparently, at least one of our members did strike these objects with the laser by accident, I guess. But anyway, he sees the laser light bending around the light and then continuing on. Okay. And he said this is the first time that anybody's ever captured that.
All right.
Said that he gets to see all the videos and photos, being a high up person in MUFON Canada, the real juicy stuff. And he says that they are seeing in authentic UFO photos and videos this effect of it. There's a name to it, and I forget what it is. It's got to do with gravity and so on, and Einstein and what have you. But he says we are seeing
Yeah.
that there's like a bubble around these things, and it will deflect the light as it goes around, and the light will continue on. Like the light comes up, the laser, and where they've got photos of UFOs against buildings and that or videos, as the craft goes by the building, they see the area around the craft blurred. It's almost like a bubble, gravity, time, and space, and so on. But there's photos now where in the case of a laser, that it bends around the object and then keeps going. So it's proving some kind of a propulsion theory. And all of this stuff is written up on MUFON Canada in the last couple of months. So, people could go there and they'll see it. And you'll see our photos, I guess, from our Argentine expedition. So, we're usually never disappointed, Bob. On every expedition, we usually get something. And it's almost like hurry up and wait. You have to be patient. And if people think, oh, if I go out, I'm going to see something, it's not quite like that. You got to put hundreds of hours in, and you're going to get a few things.
Correct.
Over those hundreds of hours. You probably know that yourself. And so,
I do that myself.
the people that
It's
aren't.
me and Paul have seen them. We've seen them orange lights at Bempton. Me and Paul have. Numerous times, the two come out and then they go 7 in a row, and then they go out and they come back again. I think we had 13 lights in a 20-minute spell.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw, but what at back of them are they masking? Is the craft at back of them? Are they? That's why what we think they are could be something entirely different.
Yeah. Well, we just don't know. We spent a whole day, Mark and I, with Luis Elizondo, and because he's signed an NDA, he cannot say things directly on what he knows. I mean, he can talk superficially, but he's very good on getting you to say it. If you say certain things, that's okay. You haven't signed an NDA. He just can't say it. But we learned an awful lot from Lou that day. As we went for a walk, went to the restaurant, we had lunch with him and dinner again, and we learned a lot. And we've got that one picture of the Cusco craft. I'll quickly show that on the screen.
Yes, please.
If I can find it. Mark, do you have it in your phone there? Apple have changed the way they show the pictures, and I can't find anything now in my phone.
Yeah, that's what I keep doing, Rob. I keep trying to look for pictures, and I'm wondering if I can put them in, because can I put them in the private chat? I keep bringing up pictures.
Yeah, you can put it up there, and I'll click on it.
Okay, sir.
Or private chat. Let's have a look, see what we can do.
Okay, I have to learn this new way that they're arranging pictures on the Apple iPhone, because I can't find my favorites now.
Okay, here we go. I've got it now.
You have it? Can you show that Cusco craft?
I'm putting it in the chat box. See if I can. No, it won't allow me to put it in the chat box.
No. Okay.
But anyway, I was bringing up different pictures on my phone, hoping to bring them in, but it's okay. We're good.
Yeah. So anyway, if they if they just search Cusco craft on our YouTube channel, Rob Freeman UFO World Explorer, Cusco craft, CUSCO, I believe, they'll see a very sharp. It looks like ultraviolet light, and there's very sharp definition to it. And I showed it to Lou Elizondo, and he says that is the signature energy of the craft. In other words, it's like an imprint in the atmosphere as the craft flashed into another dimension. And, it's crazy, because at that time, when you took night photos, we were 2 hours from Cusco, Peru. in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. And we were taking shots into the darkness with our phone, and the phone exposure is 1/4 of a second. And with that length of time, guaranteed that anything you take a photo of is going to be blurred, Bob. You know, rule of thumb is if you want to not have blurred photos, use at least 1/60th of a second or more or faster, right? So the
Right.
crazy
Yeah.
thing is, this photo is very sharp, and yet it was taken with a shutter speed of 1/4 of a second. So why is it so sharp? Well, it likely flashed so fast, it was like a 1/1000th of a second exposure. So it freeze framed it, you know, it stopped the motion. But nevertheless, we have that. It's legitimate. And he said it's the energy, probably the section that it shows in the picture. He speculates that was the engine end of the craft. But what you see in the picture is the energy imprint it left in the atmosphere. It's all lit up. And, you know, this is just some of the stuff we've got. But the crazy thing is, it is authentic. It is 100%. It's not photoshopped. It's the actual picture, untouched, unretouched. And I've posted it in UFO groups, and I've been banned from the UFO group because they're claiming
Oh
I
no.
the picture. It's like there's all this crap that's posted in these groups that's obviously photoshopped or AI generated that everybody gets all excited about. We know it's just bogus. And I actually post something authentic, and you know, the people don't believe you anyway, and they, you know, they banned me from their group. So I don't know. It seems like people are more interested in being entertained with fiction than the truth.
You know, when you look at the world, there's 70% of water around the earth. Where do you think these alien crafts come from? Or where do they base themselves on earth?
I'm glad you raised that point. You know, when we were in Playa Yaya, that's a beach about an hour south of Lima, Peru, and that is a hotspot. They claim that there is a ocean base just out from the beach. Now, we got pictures of lights out in the water. We got pictures and video of lights that were coming off the cliff and lower down on the cliff. We had a whole series of cool, high strangeness events that happened one after the other. I think there was at least 7, Mark, that happened over that evening. But
and the painters, even the painters talked. There were painters on the beach who talked about orbs coming out of the water.
yeah, and we had been with Sixto Paz Wells the day before, and Mark did a beautiful 2-hour interview with him, and he told us about many of the strange things that happened at Playa Yaya. And he talked about there being a base under the water. And I think that's absolutely true. I mean, there's a vast area of the earth that's underwater. So it would make sense to hide there if you wanted to. So it's very possible that a lot of this is native to our own earth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you there as well. Do you think a lot of these places are in between ley lines? What do you think about ley lines and parallel lines and timelines?
Yeah, I agree that there's something here. We haven't gone down that road too much. We have experienced some crazy things around timelines. For example, I will tell you that when we were in Colombia, we didn't have too much, and this is the country Colombia, not the state. We were there for a couple weeks, and there really wasn't a lot happening. And if you just go back about 3 months before that, my partner and I had each bought each other brand new iPhones. Okay. And in Canada, they're like $1,600 Canadian. Very expensive, especially if you want the 256 gigabyte size, which we do for videos and stuff.
Right.
And we had all the family in the kitchen. his sister, his mother. We had a friend over, other people, and he picked his phone up and it slipped out of his hand and hit the floor. This is literally a couple weeks after he had just gotten it for Christmas from me. And I said, don't touch it, because I watched a receptionist at a doctor's office drop her phone when she answered it. And she put it to her ear. She cut her ear and it was bleeding all over her white shirt from the broken glass. So I said, don't touch the phone. I took it, and Bob, there was a crack right across at this angle. I could feel it. I could put my fingernail there. It was sharp. So I took the cover off the phone. I took clear packing tape, placed it over the crack, trimmed it on the edge, and put the case back on. And okay, here's your phone back. No problem. You can use it until we change the glass. And, you know, every couple weeks, he'd hand it to me and he said, can you change the tape again? Like, after use, the tape starts to curl, and, you know, no problem. I can change it in a minute or two. Same thing. I take the case off. I place the tape over, trimmed it, put the case back on. Press it all down. You can still use your phone, no problem. I changed the tape about 3 times. And then Marcus and I were down in Colombia on an expedition, and not a lot happened, except the very last night, I get a call from him. And he says, Rob, I was changing the tape tonight on the phone. And he says, wasn't there a crack on the glass? The glass was cracked, right? And I says, yeah, everybody saw it. You know, I touched it. I was afraid I would cut my finger when I was changing the tape and stuff. And he said, well, the crazy thing is, there's no longer a crack on the glass. So that was bizarre. And I thought he was playing a joke, because he's a bit of a joker all the time, playing little pranks and jokes. And I thought, okay, when I get home, I'm going to check the serial number of that phone and just make sure he didn't change it over at the Apple store or something like that. Because I never know with him. He's always pulling little jokes, right? So I did get home and I looked at the phone and I went in my email to check the serial number when I bought it. And it was exactly the same serial number, Bob. But I verified it myself. There was no crack on the glass. Now, what is that? You know, is it timelines? They say there's an infinite number of timelines and that we're in most of them. And so is it possible that there's 2 timelines here. In the one timeline, he dropped the phone and it cracked the screen. And is it possible we overlapped a timeline and now we're in another one, but in that timeline, he never dropped his phone? You know, so that's one theory. And, you know, we've had other events like this multiple times, actually, around the check, around the voucher. We've had many instances where physical.
I was going to ask you tell us about what happened with the check.
Okay, so one of our members of our expedition, she had an apartment in Toronto, and we were leaving, and while we were gone in Australia, her rent was going to be coming due. And she didn't want to leave a post-dated check with the landlord. She wanted it paid on the day when it's due. So she asked her ex, now they share 2 boys. So, you know, now that they're not together, they get along just fine because they share the 2 boys. She asked her ex, she said, before we left, she says, I'm going to write the check for the rent for March 1st. And I'm going to leave it in the checkbook on the top dresser drawer of a dresser in my room. On the rent day, on March 1st, you have a key to my apartment, you know, for the boys to let them in sometimes when they're coming home from school and she's working and things like that. He said to her, will you go in, go to the top dresser drawer, go to the checkbook, tear the check out, take it down to the landlord and get a receipt? So he did that. March 1st, he went in, got the checkbook, tore it out, took it down to the landlord. The landlord wrote the apartment number on the check, and the landlord proceeded to physically take the check to the bank, where the teller wrote his account number on the back and stamped it with a wet stamp, and then it was scanned. It was put through the banking system. It was scanned in. Well, March 1st, while we were in the expedition, she saw the money go through her account. Yes, the rent's been paid. Everything's great. And, on those bank apps, you can see a scanned copy of the check. Different banks offer different options, and she could see the check had been deposited. Well, when we got back, she didn't check her dresser drawer right away, but Marcus and I were then leaving ourselves on another expedition just a few days later to Norway. While we were at the gate getting ready to board, Mark got this frantic phone call from her. Mark, this is where you can pick up the story.
Yeah, like it was very strange. We were minutes away from leaving, like an hour away from leaving. And I got the call, and, I could tell that something was going on. And I just said, what's happening? And it's like, this is the strangest thing I've ever had happen. Like, I don't understand this at all. And I said, well, what's happening? And she said, I paid my rent and everything, and, my ex-husband came over and took the check, went to the drawer, where the drawer is, where I always keep them, and took it out, told me he ripped it out of the checkbook, and took it to the landlord who went and did his business with the check. And I said, oh, okay. She goes, but the check is still in the checkbook. And I said, well, what? What do you mean? I said, are you? And my first feeling is, what are you telling me that he didn't do it? Like he didn't pay the rent? Like he said he did and he didn't? She goes, no, he paid the rent. I've seen it. It's in my application. I can bring it up in my banking app. I'm seeing the scan. I'm seeing everything. It's all there. Everything has gone through. But physically, the check is still in my drawer. It's still in the checkbook, and it hasn't been ripped out or anything. And I said, okay, well, take a picture. Like we're in Norway and we're used to strangeness. I said, take a picture of this check in the checkbook.
Yeah.
And so she did, showing that it was still in there, that it hadn't been ripped out, close-ups of the edging of the check, actual pictures of the check, showing, the date, the signature, all the information. And I was like, this is very strange. And I said, well, when we come back, and this is the most important thing about this case, this whole thing, because actually it was Grant Cameron who called this the greatest example of an apport like ever. An apport being when something appears in one place and goes to another place, like instantaneously in some sort of dimensional shift, right? And I said, okay, well, let's get the evidence. We're going to come back. So we did. So I'll cover this off quickly, but we came back. We came over to her place. She took out the check, the checkbook. Rob took the picture up against the glass of the window. We took that and we looked at it comparable to the scan in the application. It was identical. The only thing that was different was that the landlord had written her apartment number down in the right-hand corner, and that on the back was a wet stamp. Those were the only differences. And then we went one step further, and we took it to a guy with a background of, in forensics. He knows all these different kinds of things, and good friend, Dave Palchik. And I'll never forget Dave saying, yeah, you're playing with me. Like, this is a joke, right? Like she wrote out a couple checks, and then he looked at us and said, but that's impossible because she'd have to be a master forger, like she would have to be at a level of an advanced level of being able to sign her name and date and numbers identical with the same pressure of applying a pen to a piece of paper. There's too many things. And ended up going into the bank and asking the person in the bank, explain the process to us. Like, this has got a wet stamp on it. What does that require? Oh, it requires someone. They look at you weird. And then they say, well, that requires the person to physically come in with the physical check, present us with the check. We wet stamp the check. Then we scan it and put it through the system and everything. So there was just too much evidence. I mean, it was just that simple. There's like 20 things, 20 different things that absolutely verify the authenticity of that experience. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. The big thing for me, Bob, was, as Mark said, we took pictures and then we printed out the pictures. So we had 8 by 10 page of the check, very large, of both the scanned one that went through the system and the one still in the book. And we placed them against the window, and they were exact. Like, you handwrite out the written amount and it goes right across the check. Okay, there's dots in a certain spot. There's the signature, and people put all these little marks. Everything was exact.
Identical. Yeah.
The nth degree. And Dave said it's impossible. First of all, nobody even signs their name exactly the same way twice ever. Right. A computer can do it, but a person, as Mark says, there's going to be variations in the intensity, how close the letters are, how high they are, all of that, because you've got the landlord's name all written out. You've got the amount in long form written out, the words, okay? And, it's an odd amount, 1,000 something. So $1,349.24, all along the check. And then you've got the signature. Just writing out the words of the amount alone, how could anybody write it twice exactly the same way? They can't. It's an impossibility. And, somebody said, well, this is obvious. The landlord just deposited it by a bank app. He did a picture of it. Well, first of all, Mark disproved that because the lady at the bank said, no, the check was brought in and physically stamped with a black ink stamp twice on the back. And then the teller initials it and writes the account number with her hand. Okay. So
and Rob, I will add this little piece. Sorry to interrupt. I remember in the building going down to the landlord's office, and there being a moment where the landlord left the office, looked at the ledger, and right in the ledger, it states received check on March 1st from apartment number da da da. Like, he had completely notarized the fact that he physically received the check. Like, he physically received it. So it's like, and again, I mean, I always smile at those moments because I'm sitting there saying, how are we in this man's office at the exact moment that he leaves and we can look down at his ledger and know?
Yeah. And so the thing is, Bob, what is this? Is it an apport of some kind, or are they multiple timelines? For example, in the one timeline, the ex tore the check out of the book, took it down, the rent got paid physically, went to the bank and all that. In the other timeline, it was never ripped out of the book.
Correct.
So somehow we're going back and forth on these timelines. And, when we went to Norway.
And honestly.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, Rob, just a footnote that even having a discussion with the ex, like he had an actual face-to-face conversation with the ex saying, did you take the check? And he's looking at her saying, what are you talking about? And she's like, I have the check in the checkbook, and showed her ex. And he literally said, you're crazy. Dylan, what are you doing? Why'd you go and write another check? Like, get out of here. Like, go. Like, it was too many things.
But anyway, moving on, that's just another example of this interdimensionality, these timelines. Interestingly enough, too, Bob, We were just in Bolivia. We just got back a couple weeks ago, and had a whole series of neat events happen when I arrived at the apartment. Now, let's go back just a week before. I had been here, up at the beach, Ipperwash Beach near Grand Bend, Ontario, and we had done a little picnic on the beach. We had packed all our lunch and stuff, and we had a table and all this stuff. And halfway through the afternoon, when we decided that we'll start packing up, I brought something back to the car, and there was a coin behind my car on the ground, which hadn't been there when we unpacked everything for the beach just a couple hours earlier. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And it was very shiny. It was like a brass or bronze colored or copper. It was very shiny gold color. And I reached down, and it was right behind the car. And I looked at it, and it was a euro coin. And I thought, well, is this for me? Was this planted for me somehow? And I looked at the coin, and it had the initials RF on the coin. Now, my initials are RF. So I thought, okay, maybe that's a coincidence, but that's pretty neat. I put the coin in my pocket. I keep it. And, but I thought, that kind of stops you and you think a little bit. Anyway, Mark arrived in Bolivia ahead of me. He had our Airbnb all ready to go. And it was an apartment in a condo apartment complex. I arrived with all my stuff, and I put my big camera, knapsack on the bed in my room. Mark said, this is your room here. I put it on the bed. And then I thought to myself, well, where am I going to put that camera case? And there was a table. Okay, I'll put it over there because I can open it and get my cameras. When I went back to the bed to grab my knapsack with the cameras in it, all of a sudden, now there's a silver, like aluminum silver, coin on the bed. And I thought, this is interesting. And it was a 20 centavo Bolivian coin. Centavos are cents. And I thought that's neat. A coin appearing out of nowhere. This is twice now. First back home, now, 2 weeks later. So I go out to the living room. Mark's working at the dining room table. I don't know if he had his computer open, but I talked to Mark here and I said, Mark, this just showed up on my bed after I arrived. And he said, well, show me. And we walked back down to the bedroom and he says, oh, Rob, look, there's one on the floor also. Now, I had seen the floor and there were no coins on the floor when I walked out of the room. Walking back into the room, there's another coin on the floor. I pick it up, and again, it's a 20 centavo Bolivian coin, like aluminum color, right? And we thought, well, here goes the whole apport thing again, right? So we go back to the living room there, the dining room table, and we're talking. Mark's getting me organized. And he says, Rod, here is your key fob to get into the building. It's like a credit card. It's magnetic. And he placed it down in front of me. Okay. Now, I was aware of the table in front of me, and there was nothing there before he placed it down. He placed it down in front of me, and I took it in my hands to just take a look at it. And what is underneath that credit card size key fob thing? Another coin, Bob. And I looked at it, and again, for the third time, it's a 20 centavo Bolivian coin. So, all these coins are happening. Now, if you talk to Grant Cameron, he'll tell you that a lot of people will get coins dropping out of the sky, literally in front of them. Now, I was at a clinic just a week ago, and I was going to be waiting a while to be seen, and I was a little bit hungry, so I used my phone to, we can have our credit cards in our phone and you can buy with tap, right? Just the tap function. So the vending machine has the function, and I chose some potato chips and I, tapped to make payment, and it accepted and approved it. And then my selection came down in the machine, but I also heard a coin fall. And I thought, this is weird. And as I opened, you have to push your hand in. There's like a series of flaps so you can't steal anything. When you open it, it only allows you access to the item that just fell. And right beside the item that just fell was a Canadian quarter, a Canadian quarter. Now, everybody that was standing around saw this, and they clapped, and they says, "Oh, go out and buy a lottery ticket."
That's right.
So I did buy a lottery ticket, and it did win $20. And again, there's the two, 20. So it's all coming up twos.
True.
You know, 20, 20, 20. Even the European coin was 20 cents, a euro coin for 20 cents. They were all 20s, and the quarter was actually 25. We don't have 20-cent coins in Canada. Closest thing to it is 25 cents, and that was the quarter that fell. And the lottery ticket won $20. So, you know, what's that all about? What's that all about?
It's the delay.
Exactly. I was going to say it's called synchronicity.
Yeah. And so, you know, we could go on and on all afternoon long, Bob, on all the cool high strangeness things that we've had happen to us. But I will tell your audience that, you know, when you start down this road, you know, looking for lights in the sky and seeing them, you know, don't forget to look around you in your environment, because the level of cool high strangeness will start going up like this to match it. And, you know, we call it the cosmic wink, as I said, and it's just such an interesting thing for us.
I think more has happened since then. We've seen different things. I've seen lights under the sea, like a triangle of lights being called. So a triangle of lights under the sea for half an hour, and it just seemed to float out to sea. And then we both turned to his right. I don't know why. At the side of a cliff, down the side of a cliff, there were an oblong red in colour. So I would say, I don't know, 200 by 50 or something, on the side of a cliff. Now, if I hadn't moved and he saw it, I'd have said, "Oh, I don't know about that, Paul." But we both turned around at the same time, saw it visually, and then it just went out.
Oh, wow.
Interesting,
and then
Bob.
vanished, just like that.
Interesting. Now, when we were recently,
You know, and that's quite big on the side of a cliff.
yeah, that's like in Playa when we had the lights on the cliff. Now, we were, again, recently in Bolivia, and more specifically at Lake, and this is a real name, Titicaca. Lake Titicaca, which transverses Bolivia and Peru.
Titicaca.
Half of the lake is in Peru, half of the lake is in Bolivia. And the one night we were on an island, I forget the island, it's Isla del Sol, I guess.
Yeah.
And where a lot of things have been seen. And I had all my equipment set up, you know, over here, I guess. You can see all the equipment in the background. And, you know, everybody went to bed around midnight, but I stayed up until about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm kind of the diehard guy with all my camera equipment. And the next day when I looked through the footage of it was the full spectrum camera. You know, it captures ultraviolet through visible, through infrared. And the camera itself, every time you press record, it will record for 30-minute increments. I think they do that so the sensor can cool down each time. And so I had just pressed the camera to record again, And when I looked at the video in the very first frame only, this is what we saw right there. See the streak of lights there?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, got to remember.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Got to remember that the camera
I
is
can do.
shooting,
Yeah, I can.
it's shooting at 30 frames per second. That means every second there's 30 pictures taken. And the next second there's 30 pictures. That's your video. Okay, that's how a camera is able to make video. It captures 30 frames per second. That picture is the very first frame of the next video. And you see the lights going across. So what that means is in 1/30th of a second, you had a light that came on, it went out, came on again, and then in the next frame, it's gone. So Dave, again, our friend from MUFON, he's calculated the speed of that light to be, oh gosh, probably in the thousands of miles per hour. I didn't see it with my eyes, okay, but my camera caught it. And, we do find a lot of that with the cameras where, when you look at the footage the next day, you find all kinds of strange things in your footage. And that's yet another one. Like in the next frame, the light was gone. So that's how fast it was moving across. In 1/30th of a second, it was captured. It was on, off, on. The next 1/30th of a second, it's gone. Dave says it probably went below the horizon. So this just gives you, some idea of the kind of things that we're involved with in our travels. And we're going to be in Brazil next week.
I was going to ask you that before we go. So you're off to Brazil next week?
Yes.
And Mark, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Very excited about
brilliant.
Yeah, no, super excited about Brazil. We ended up doing 3 South American countries this summer: Argentina, Bolivia, and now Brazil. So we're going to Varginha, having opportunities to go in the field with a lot of experiencers and different contactees who have had experiences in that area. It's about 4 hours out of Sao Paulo. It's more rural. Sao Paulo is the city, so it's not conducive to experiences, and definitely being in the field with people who have had experiences over decades. Since the Varginha incident happened, it's going to be incredible. We're going to be busy.
It sounds like it as well. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely wonderful. I won't leave it too long for next time, 3 years, or maybe in 2027 at the same time.
Oh, we look forward to it, Bob.
I'll have you on back again before then, so I'm sure there's lots more to talk about.
Absolutely.
Well, we definitely appreciate it.
It's been very interesting. I've enjoyed it today.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have too. We appreciate it, and we look forward to being on your show
Thank
again.
you.
Maybe in 1 year's time.
And I'm sure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Bob.
And I'm sure you'll be going on Paul Sinclair's show soon as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
You take care and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes. Thank you. My guest on Friday is Jorinda Stewart. She's a renowned psychic medium, UFO enthusiast, the cult, fascinating work that spans the unknown. This is Friday, the 18th of October, at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific, and 8 p.m., 7 p.m. in the UK. Good night and God bless. Bye for now.